Hi, welcome to Gene Rants. I'm Gene, and I'm recording this on Tuesday. You're seeing it on Wednesday. So the day before I'm recording this, Monday, was the day of this highly touted meeting among Trump and I guess I was going to say world leaders, but I don't see a whole lot of leadership there. I didn't see much. And in what I saw of the White House conference, basically it was, well, as usual, Trump, 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 and didn't hear any. I was frankly surprised at how there was really no pushback from any of these so-called world leaders. And what I'm getting at is that, if you want to do anything, the United States is vital. So you have to, I guess you have to be nice to Donald Trump. If you make him mad, then logic and reason, and it doesn't matter if you criticize me if I'm Trump. I'll just do what has to be done. You make him mad and he changes. So it's not. There's no upside to making him mad. So everybody very, very nice, especially Zelensky, which really, well, it didn't surprise me because remember in February he met at the White House and it was a very contentious, acrimonious meeting. It did not go well. And basically what triggered it was that, well, Trump saying then what he was saying now. Well, we have to, too many people being killed, too many people, we have to end this and we have to negotiate. We need diplomacy to stop the killing. That's basically it. And Zelensky said, I think it was actually J.D. Vance who was there, who said that. And then Zelensky turned to him and said, well, I signed a non-aggression, essentially, agreement with Putin years ago, and Putin broke it. So what kind of diplomacy are you talking about? And that's when both Vance and Trump blew up at him. Now, so he was nice this time, and I guess what he has to do is just be nice and let what I think it could. I mean, I want to be wrong. I obviously want to be wrong. I voted for Trump, but it looks like Zelensky has to just be nice and let Trump learn from experience what Zelensky told him. Essentially, when he said, what kind of diplomacy are you talking about? Saying you cannot make a deal with Putin. And time now, 6 months later, this what kind of diplomacy? Well, we now know who didn't know what he was talking about, and it was not Volodymyr Zelensky. And another thing, if you recall that meeting at all, Zelensky said to Vance, come to Ukraine, see for yourself what the situation is. And J.D. Vance said, no, I don't have to go. I know what's going on. That was the attitude now. And now you're seeing, well, what could happen, what I worry about is, well, you know what? Before we get to what I could worry about, let me give you some bullet points here. This is a list of, this comes from the Institute of the Study of War. I'm linking to the full article, as I try to do always, unless I forget, in the description. You can read the whole thing. It's actually quite lengthy. But here are some bullet points that they see and with which I agree that are obstacles to ending the war on, this is the important part, on terms that would be, never mind favorable to Ukraine, but just acceptable, that amounts to, that is not a total surrender to Putin. So let's go through these bullet points together. Russia continues to deny Ukraine's sovereignty and to demand the right to dictate Ukrainian domestic affairs. Russian President Vladimir Putin's insistence that any peace agreement must address Russia's perceived root causes of the war will make it difficult to reach a peace agreement as rapidly as Trump desires, given the complexity of the root causes. I would say it makes it difficult to reach any agreement at all. But anyways, continuing, Russia's root causes extend beyond Ukraine, and eliminating them would require substantial negotiations with NATO. Putin's offer of a Russian law forbidding a future invasion of Ukraine is not credible because Russia has already twice broken previous binding, I guess so-called binding international commitments to not invade. And as Putin has shown that he can freely change Russian law as he desires. And as Volodymyr Zelensky told Vance and Trump at the White House in February. Next bullet point, the details about Ukrainian security guarantees to which Putin may have agreed remain unclear at this time, but the Kremlin may be attempting to resurrect its demands about security guarantors from April 2022 that would have neutered such guarantees. And finally, last but not least, Russia will be unable, this is an important point here, as you'll see in a moment, I'm going to show you a video. Russia will be unable to seize the remainder of Donetsk Oblast. An oblast is the equivalent of an American state, or a state, rapidly through force, as Russian forces have failed to do so for over a decade. Russia could only rapidly seize all of Donetsk Oblast if Ukraine concedes to Putin's demand and withdraws from the remainder of the oblast. And that is one of the things that that Putin is demanding. He wants, never mind keeping land that he has already conquered, he wants land that he hasn't conquered. He wants Ukraine just to give it up, get out. And the problem with Donetsk and the Donbass is the land. That's where there's a fortified Ukrainian line that is stopping the Russian advance. You take that away and it's all flat land from there to Kyiv. And that's what it would be militarily, strategically, it would be suicide for Ukraine. You see what I'm getting at? To agree to that. Now, of all this commentary, and I'll say, well, it just really irritates me. In fact, I'm preparing, I hope they'll publish it. They don't always publish everything I do, but I occasionally write for American Thinker, and I'm contrasting, well, as Trump himself has said numerous times, I make deals. I remember that, well, so now you're seeing all these discussions of a possible deal, talking heads, yada, yada, yada. They just go on and on and on. And I just remember, I'm old enough, obviously, to remember another president, President Ronald Reagan. He came into office, and then there was the Soviet Union still existed, the USSR, and they were not only in Ukraine, they were also in Azerbaijan and all these. I'm not going to bore you with a whole long list. Many, Lithuania. All of these countries were part of the Soviet Union, and they were also, there was the Warsaw Pact countries, such as well, at that time Czechoslovakia. It doesn't exist anymore. They went their separate ways. It was an amiable divorce, I guess you call it. So now it's Slovenia and the Czech Republic. So they split. Poland and Bulgaria and Romania, all these countries. Reagan. So they came in, when he came into office, and his advisors, his foreign policy advisors, said, well, what do we do, détente, what's your policy going to be? And Reagan's policy, 4 words, we win, they lose. That's simple. And he got, never mind just Ukraine, he brought down the Soviet Union, he got Russia, which is essentially what the Soviet Union was, out of all these countries without firing a shot, simply applying the economic levers that Trump could apply now, but he doesn't want to. I mean, all they're talking about, well, Ukraine, can Ukraine win? They can't win, they have to make a deal. That is the wrong question. The question is, can we, with our allies, crush the Russian economy and then force, essentially just why reinvent the wheel? Just do what Reagan's already successfully did, and this time that's what frustrates me. Reagan got got Russia out of all these countries, and Trump cannot even get Russia out of Ukraine. And why? Is because it's a different approach. He wants. I thank God. I think I've said this in past vlogs that I just said it, that if he had been, thank God that Trump had not been president during World War II, because Germany actually, I don't want to get off on along the side. There was an Admiral Canaris, Wilhelm Canaris. He was an admiral and head of the Abwehr, which was a secret service during World War II in Germany. But he was a double agent in a way. He had been communicating with the Allies, and about a year before, when it was clear in 1944 that Germany was going to lose the war, he contacted Churchill and said, can we discuss terms for surrender to end this war, that prevent future another million deaths perhaps of a war that is already lost? And Churchill answered back, unconditional surrender. That was his reply. And it was also Dwight Eisenhower went to FDR's, if I recall my history correctly, and the same thing. Eisenhower said, well, if let Germany sue for peace right now, and we'll end the war at least a year early, and we will save millions of lives. And FDR said, no, unconditional surrender, which was the same deal with, if you want to call it a deal, with Japan, unconditional surrender. That is leadership, and that is putting knowing right from wrong. And well, I don't want to say Trump doesn't know right from wrong, but it doesn't motivate his policies. It's just doesn't matter what a war is about. It's just stop the killing, stop the killing, stop the killing. And if he had been president during World War II, the Nazis would have stayed in power. He would have. In fact, I could even speculate that when England asked us for help, we created the Lend-Lease program. We supplied weapons even before soldiers. That's how we got into the war, because we actually violated international. We didn't violate international law, but if the two countries are at war, and you can you're neutral, means you don't help either side. Once you help one side, then you become a legitimate target. And that's what happened. We supplied, starting in 1939, if not earlier, we supplied materiel to England, and that caused Germany to declare war on us. And FDR knew that it would bring us into the war. It would ruin our neutrality, but he did it because that was the right thing to do. And Trump doesn't look at what is the right thing to do. Possible exception, to be fair, Israel, where he understands that Hamas has to be eliminated. But I still wouldn't put it past Trump to change his mind later. But getting back to Ukraine, all these talking heads talking about the nuances of a deal, and nobody wants to express any skepticism about whether a deal is possible, except I came across one exception that I'm going to share with you right now. This is a video. This is Dan Hoffman. He is a former CIA agent chief, and he's going to tell you right now, well, it's going to start with a little prelude. He was on Fox News. I don't remember which show. He was on Fox News, and the video begins with another brief summary of this surprised me. Brief summary of what Putin wants, number one, but number two, that according to these people, and they could be wrong, right? It's happened before where the media reports something, and then Trump or Rubio or somebody says, no, it's fake news. You don't know what you're talking about. And but according, they say reports that Trump is open to essentially siding with Putin and forcing, this is what I worry, forcing Ukraine into a bad deal because Trump, and if it means a conquest of the rest of Ukraine later, well, he just wants to stop the killing, and that's all he cares about. And sometimes it's sad, but there is such a thing as just war, and sometimes war is necessary. It's so unfortunate, but that's the world. That's the world. We are not angels. So now I'm going to turn the floor over to a brief prelude of some panelists on Fox News, very short, and then on to comments by Dan Hoffman that I think are very important. So I hope you'll listen. It's a few minutes. It's not that long, and it's worth listening to. And then I will be back with a final word.
Tomorrow, President Trump is set to meet with Ukrainian President Zelensky at the White House as he tries to ink a peace deal between Kyiv and Moscow. Sources telling Fox Trump now supports Putin's push to control the Donbass region in eastern Ukraine and more in exchange for freezing the current front lines. So are we on the brink of a peace deal? Fox News contributor and former CIA station chief Dan Hoffman. He served in Moscow and he joins us now. Dan, going into this meeting, you made the statement that resonated with me. You said this looks a lot more like the beginning than the end of this conversation or reaching this deal. Now we're getting some real details, and those details show not a great deal for Ukraine unless you look at keeping your sovereignty as a country as a great deal. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree with you, Joey. Look, I think if I were sitting in the room with President Trump, as I used to back at CIA, brief the White House and on Russia, I spent years trying to see the world through the twisted KGB eyes of Vladimir Putin. I think I would emphasize that Putin wants to assert Russia's primacy in Russia's own self-designated sphere of influence. They want to demonstrate that the United States has limited leverage to influence how things play out in the former Soviet Union in this war in Ukraine. For sure, Putin wants a bad deal for Ukraine. China's watching too, because if China sees that the United States is unable to project force and influence in Europe, then we might not be able to do that in the Pacific as well. That has ramifications for China's threats against Taiwan. So there's a lot at stake here, and I think we best proceed carefully and cautiously.
Is this a situation where there isn't a great point of leverage for the United States? I mean, I look at this and I see, okay, well, Zelensky wants security guarantees. Putin says part of his reasoning for this to begin with was the idea of Ukraine joining NATO. So if Ukraine joining NATO is the linchpin for Putin and security guarantees are the linchpin for Zelensky giving up this land, I guess, peacefully, what is the middle ground? It seems like they're still in a position where they want opposing things.
Yeah, well, look, I don't think Ukraine should or would want to give up land that Russia hasn't even conquered yet. And you know from your service in the military in war zones that if Ukraine were to give up some of that land in the Donbass, it would make Ukraine more vulnerable to future attacks. Vladimir Putin has violated ceasefires in the past. His strategic objective is to overthrow the government of Kyiv and establish a puppet regime. And Putin knows that if he's forcing Ukraine to accede to a bad deal, that will put pressure on Zelensky, will put pressure on Ukraine and their democracy, and might give Putin a chance to run his own information propaganda operations and influence Ukraine's domestic future. So I think that's the concern there.
You brought up China. That's a great transition here. What can President Trump do? It seems like he's juggling two opposing things, and China as well. He's trying to lower tariffs and make a deal. At the same time, if he puts sanctions on Russia, part of that will move into China buying Russian oil.
Yeah, I think we need to look strong. Look, President Biden didn't win a Nobel Peace Prize when he withdrew from Afghanistan so chaotically and damaged his own administration's reputation. The best thing we can do is show China and Russia that we have the strength, the leverage economically, militarily, diplomatically to project force, project power in the world. And ending this war is certainly one way to help us break this axis of dictatorships, Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. But we've got to do it the right way with a good deal that serves our interests, not just Ukraine's interest. It's broader than that. Certainly, if Europe were threatened by Putin, that's $1 trillion worth of trade that we enjoy with that continent.
Yeah, Dan, I think the question is, what is the price of peace and who pays it? And I guess we're going to find that out soon enough. Dan Hoffman, thank you so much for joining us.
That's it for today. Everything you saw and heard pretty much sums up everything that I am, as I said at the outset, I would love to be proven wrong, but again, color me skeptical. I don't, as things are today, I don't see this ending well. I don't. Either what Trump, I guess I should say, well, what would I do? And this is what Trump should have done. This is what I thought was going to happen. Trump said I would know within 2 minutes of meeting Putin whether I could work with him or not. And to me, it was clear within 2 minutes that he couldn't. And you have to remember that Putin, as I understand, Putin invited Trump to meet with him. Trump chose the venue, Alaska, but it was Putin who requested the meeting, not Trump. That shows that there are problems in the Russian economy, and Trump should have turned the screws. I mean, if it had been if I had been president, first of all, the whole world, never mind America, the whole world would be a much better place if I were president. How do I know? Well, I'm Gene, I know. So getting back to what I would have done, when Putin called me to say, well, can we meet? I say, well, I will meet you to announce, not negotiate. I will meet you to announce a ceasefire, not to negotiate anything, to announce. We will get you and I side by side, get before the camera, and announce an immediate ceasefire. You don't want to do that? Putin will say, no, okay, well, fine. And just then turn the screws. I hear this again and again, how we could crush, and we could drive the price of oil down to $40 a barrel at least, and even lower would be even better. Get the Saudis, Saudis are their allies, right, are just temporarily, let's all work together, and Europe, don't buy Russian oil. Get the price down. That's number one. Number two, take all Russian banks out of the SWIFT system. I won't go into details about SWIFT. It's not really germane, but it's the way, it's the mechanism or the organization through which banks do international business. Basically, you take Russia out of that system and they can't do business with the rest of the world. That's what it amounts to. And number three, there are something like $350 billion of assets, Russian assets, Russian financial assets that are frozen in Europe. Now, Europe has been using the interest earned on those assets to finance, to partly finance the Ukraine war, weapons for Ukraine. But what they should do is they should just seize all of it, use the whole $350 billion to finance Ukraine. And then, first of all, Europe wouldn't have to do it. And then, number one, number two, it would be a humiliation for Putin. But just imagine that Putin is paying for the weapons on both sides of the Ukraine-Russia war. So those are some things I would do. Curious to, always welcome, happy to hear what you would do, or whether you agree with me, whether you agree with Dan Hoffman. Again, I think he is the first person speaking common sense. And there was another video of him, I don't want to load you up with videos, also interview with him, saying that he's skeptical. He's skeptical, that he hopes, as I do, that this all works out, but he's skeptical just because Putin is Putin. And that's it. Trump should have if we really have the ability to crush the Russian economy, we should have done that first. That's my bottom line final thought. We should have done that first. That's what Reagan did. Should have done that first. Get Russia on the ropes, bankrupt them. The people have, right now, the war is all in Ukraine. And that's why is that? Why? I mean, there have been some sporadic attacks on oil refining facilities and things like that, but the day-to-day people the day-to-day people in Kyiv, their apartment buildings are being bombed, so on and so forth. But people in Russia, except for economic consequences, they're perfectly comfortable because Moscow and the non-military, just Russia, they are not feeling the war, and that is again because of Donald Trump. So we're supposedly supplying all these weapons, or the buying now. Europe is buying them from us, and they are paying for them. They are supplying them, but restrictions on how they can use them. If there are any restrictions on how Russia uses her weapons, I'm not aware of them. So, okay, that's it. I thought I was going to end, and then as usual, I didn't. So, the ending for sure. Thanks for watching. If you could subscribe, that would really be great. If you could share this video with anyone who would benefit from it, that would be great. If you could subscribe, that would really be great. But most of all, come back and see me again. I'd love to see all of you again. And until I do see all of you again, bye.